So, welcome to this Insights Festival event. My name is John Collins. I'm Chief Executive at Prisons Education Trust, and I'm going to be speaking to you today along with my colleague Claire, so I'll ask her to introduce herself.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Claire Lloyd and I'm Head of Service Delivery at Prisons Education Trust. Nice to see you all.
So in a minute, I'm going to share some slides, hopefully assuming the tech works, and talk through them. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions, comments, discussion, anything else you want to raise. But we're quite a small group and we're pretty informal anyway. So if there's stuff you want to ask us as we go through or that isn't clear, don't want to wait till the end, just shout out. I may not be able to see you past the slides, so just say, and we're very happy to be interrupted or to digress and talk about other things. Really, whatever works for you. But either way, we'll make sure there's plenty of time for questions at the end. Hopefully this will be interesting and useful. But like I said, if there's things that you would like to pick up on at the end that we haven't covered, then make a note of them and we'll come back to them. So I'm going to hopefully start sharing slides now. It'll just take a minute or two to get up onto my screen. But hopefully you should be able to see that imminently. Yep. Great. So like I said, we'll run through some slides first of all, and then we'll take questions at the end. So first of all, welcome and thank you for coming. We know how busy people working in the justice system are at the moment, and we know how much you all have on. And we know how difficult it can be to find a functioning laptop and IT link for those of you who are in prison. So we're really grateful that you've made the time to come along and join us. We hope it will be interesting and useful. In terms of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk a bit about PET, who we are and what we do, what we offer for people in prison, and the difference that we think that our work makes for people in prison. Claire's going to talk a bit about how we work in a bit more detail and what prisons can do to help support us in what we do. And at the end, I'll just talk briefly about what we've got coming up and what we're prioritising at the moment. So there'll be a sort of quick canter through PET and what we have to offer to give you a bit of an insight into the way that we work. So about Prisons Education Trust, who are we and what do we do? Some of you may know us well already, but other of you may only come into contact with us in a very limited or specific way. And some of you may have never heard of us before today. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background. So we're an independent charity. We were set up nearly 35 years ago now, in 1989, to offer access to distance learning in prison. So our founders spotted a gap, I think, in education provision in prison. They felt that people who wanted to go beyond what was available to them through core education provision didn't have many opportunities to do that, and thought that distance learning would be a way that people could do courses that wouldn't otherwise be available to them. So they spotted that gap. They set up PET to try and fill that gap, originally working just in HMP Wandsworth, so just one prison. And pretty much that's what we do today. That gap is still there in terms of what education people can access in prison, and we still look to work around that by providing access to distance learning courses. So what our offer is, as I said, is we offer access to distance learning courses. I'll talk in a minute about what they are and the sort of breadth we offer, and also related information, advice and guidance around distance learning and around the courses that we offer. And we do that by post, phone, so we've got an advice line, an EMAP, and also for staff via our website, and Claire will talk about that a bit more in a minute. We started out in just one prison, HMP Wandsworth. What we offer is now available to every prison in England and Wales, also the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man, if we've got anyone joining us from either of those places. So we've spread rapidly across the whole country, and we like to work with as many prisons and as many prison staff across the country as we can. Inevitably, the amount of contact we have from different prisons varies depending on the sort of prison they are, the population makeup, the sort of work that they're doing. But we try and make ourselves as available as possible to potential learners wherever they are in the country, and particularly if they move around between prisons. We were set up as, and we still are, an independent charity. So while we have support from HMPPS and some funding from HMPPS to enable us to do what we do, we also raise other money from other sources. I have a fantastic fundraising team who raise money from trusts and foundations, from individuals. We've got a bunch of people running a half marathon in a couple of weeks to raise sponsorship. So anywhere we can raise a few extra pounds, we do, so we can push it into supporting as many people as possible to access distance learning courses in prison. And because we're a charity, we can get money from as many different places as possible and feed all that money into the system. So it's a sort of joint effort to raise as much cash as we can to fund as many courses as we can for the people who want to do them. I think it's sort of worth saying at this point that we are, as a charity, we're strongly driven by our values and also by the importance of making sure that lived experience is at the heart of everything that we do. So we try and make sure that people with lived experience of prison and prison education inform the way that we develop and deliver our services, help us think through how to make what we do as available as possible to people in prison, and to ensure that what we offer is aligned with what people in prison need and want. So we have an advisory group made up of former alumni. We have other mechanisms for engaging with people in prison. All the work that we do through our advice line, other information, advice and guidance directly coming into contact with people in prison, all helps to inform the service that we run and the way that we do it. Try and make sure that we take into account the real experiences of people who live in prison. We're primarily not prison based, so we have about 20 staff. We're based primarily in London and in Cardiff. Though we try and visit prisons when we can, we're not in prisons on a day-to-day basis. So we try and make sure that we stay in contact with prison staff and with people in prison themselves to inform the way that we run the organisation and the services that we deliver. It's really important to us that we don't get out of touch and that we recognise that prisons are a difficult and challenging environment to deliver services in, and we need to respond to that for the people who work there or who live there. And finally, while a huge amount of our focus and the primary topic of today's conversation is around the services that we deliver, we also have a broader role in terms of informing policy and advocating on behalf of our learners with policymakers, parliamentarians, ministers, civil servants, to try and ensure that prison education as a whole and distance learning as well gets the support, the funding and the profile that it needs. So we take on that broader role, sort of working with the sector and on behalf of the sector to advocate for prison education. So that is a summary, I suppose, of our history and who we are. In terms of what we do now, so as I mentioned, we offer access to distance learning courses. At the moment, in our current prospectus, which you can see a picture of on the slide, which is available for anyone to download from our website, we offer access to just over 125 different courses now, and they are a really broad range. There is, I think, surely something in there for everyone, given the breadth of what we offer. So some of it's academic, so we offer access to GCSEs and A-levels for people who might want to go down that route. Open university access modules for people who are maybe thinking of going on to do a degree, but aren't quite ready to do a full degree course yet. An access module, for those of you who don't know, is a bit like a foundation course. It's to prepare you for higher education. But then we also offer a huge range of professional and vocational courses, whether it's health and safety or bookkeeping or business startup, a really big range. And I'll show you in a minute some of the sort of most popular ones, but also things that might be seen as a bit more niche. Beekeeping is one that we always like to refer to, or things like creative writing, which maybe aren't directly vocational, though some people might go on to be a beekeeper or indeed an author, but are about engaging people in education, giving people the sort of interest in learning that may lead them further into education, but also because of the impact that doing something that you're interested in and that you care about can have on your engagement and on your mental health and your well-being. We don't provide all those courses ourselves. We don't provide any of those courses. We could not be experts in 125 different topics, however hard we tried. So what we do is we work with a whole range of different course suppliers to identify the best quality courses in each of those areas that we then make available to people in prison. So essentially we buy them on behalf of the learner. And part of our role is to make sure that the courses are good quality. that wherever possible, they're accredited or lead to a qualification of some kind as much as we possibly can. And also make sure the courses are suitable to be done by people in prison. And obviously there are some significant constraints on people in prison in terms of what they can do, limited internet access, for example. So almost all of our courses are still paper-based, but also there's sort of rules about whether or not you can have ring binders and whether or not you can have maps and all sorts of things that wouldn't really apply to anyone in almost any other circumstance, but which are relevant for people in prison. So by having PET as a centre to manage that process, we can work with those course suppliers. We can make sure that the course, when it arrives at the prison gate, is a suitable course for people to do in prison. It is a good quality course, and it will be recognised when people leave as a qualification that it was worth them getting. And because while each prison might have quite small numbers of distance learners, we work with a lot of people across the whole country. We have good relationships with those suppliers and can persuade them to make adaptations or changes to make sure that the courses are suitable for people in prison. In terms of volume, so during last calendar year, we funded just over 1,500 courses for people in prison. There may be a few people there who did more than one, but 1,500 courses out of just over 2,200 applications. To complement that, I mentioned that important part of our role is providing supporting information, advice and guidance around distance learning. So we did that on just over 3,600 occasions last year. So that's people contacting us, asking for our advice and support. And that included just under 1,400 calls on our advice line. So one of our relatively new innovations at PET is during the COVID pandemic, while people couldn't necessarily get into the education department to speak to education staff to ask us things on their behalf, we set up an advice line which enables people to call us directly to ask us any questions that they have. And we've continued that post the pandemic and continue to offer it as a really valuable service. And that sort of level of demand, while not huge in terms of numbers, shows that people are making use of that opportunity to speak to us directly. So I've talked a bit about the courses that we offer and the range and the all sorts of different courses. In terms of the learners that we work with, we do quite a lot of monitoring to find out why they wanted to study with us, what they thought they were going to get out of it, and then what they did get out of it afterwards, to make sure that we're offering the right things and that we understand our learners' motivation. It comes in a whole load of different monitoring forms, which my long-suffering colleagues in our service delivery team have to go through and enter and sift and sort. And I'm not going to go through all the data that comes out of that. Even I don't like that much data, but I thought I'd just highlight a few things that came out of it. So we asked people why they're interested in doing a course when they've applied. You can see those numbers there, that a lot of them say the same things. So the vast majority did it to gain skills, a qualification. A lot of them are thinking about employment. So unsurprising reasons why people might do an educational course, you might think. Skills, qualifications, trying to get a job. 2/3 more or less also said it would occupy their time usefully. And I think that is a really important motivation for a lot of people, that it's something they can do that's constructive and useful. And I'm going to share a few quotes from learners in a minute, which will demonstrate how that comes through in terms of the impact that it has on their mental health and on their well-being. So you can see the sort of motivations for people studying there. And that's, I think, borne through in the courses that people choose. So I mentioned we do 125 odd courses. These are the most popular ones that we did last year. Sorry, it's quite small, but you can see from that there are some themes cutting through. So a lot of them are occupationally driven. So health and safety courses, business startup and bookkeeping I already mentioned, and a couple of the access modules, which are, as I mentioned, the OU courses are on there as well. Creative writing and creative writing for wellbeing is often just around the bottom of the top 10, didn't quite make it in last year, but is one that does demonstrate a slightly different motivation. I think not that many people who are doing that course are necessarily thinking that's what their career is going to be, though it will be for some of them. Is they want to find an avenue and an opportunity to use their creativity and see a course as a way of helping to do that. But like I said, they didn't quite make the top 10, but you can see the ones there that did, and the sorts of issues and courses that people are interested in doing. And a lot of these consistently appear in our sort of top 10 year in and year out, particularly the NEBOSH health and safety courses, which people see as a really important route into employment. So that's the courses. So what impact does our work have? Obviously, it's really important for us to be able to demonstrate that what people do with us makes a difference. And I guess there's two main ways that we do that. The first one is statistical. So some of you who work in this sector may be aware of the Justice Data Lab, which is run by the Ministry of Justice. Essentially, it's a team of statisticians. I can never say that word right. Statisticians based in the Ministry of Justice. And what you do is you give them the details of the people who you've supported over an extended period, and they then compare them with another group of people who are as similar as possible to them in every other way, other than that they haven't done one of your courses, and they compare what the outcomes for them are after they leave prison. So for anyone who's a research nerd, you can't really do a randomized control trial with the work that we do. So this is the next best thing in terms of trying to find a matched comparison group and try and get a sense of how much difference what we do makes. And that primarily measures whether or not doing a PET course makes people more or less likely to reoffend after they leave prison. Unfortunately for all of us, it shows pretty clearly, and we've run our data through the data lab 3 times now, and every time it's told us the same thing. The people who do a PET course are less likely to reoffend after they leave prison than otherwise similar people who don't do a course. So it reduces reoffending. Also, probably unsurprisingly, we've measured whether or not it makes it more likely for people to leave when they leave prison to get a job. And again, people who do a PET course are more likely to get a job after release than similar people who didn't do a PET course. So it improves employment opportunities as well. For anyone who's interested, I haven't put it on the slide, but we also did a further bit of work which showed that people are less likely to reoffend if they've done a PET course, whether or not they go into employment. So it's a separate, it's not just the fact it gets them a job, and that means they're less likely to reoffend. Even for those people who don't get a job when they leave, they're still less likely to commit another offence than someone else who didn't do a PET course. So there is a distinct separate value from doing learning that isn't just about getting a job. And then the last one, which is actually from the previous time we ran our stuff through the Justice Data Lab, the first 2 are from 2021. This one's from 2018, but I'm sure it still stands, that people who do a course are less likely to claim out of work benefits than otherwise similar people, which is something that the Ministry of Justice and the Department for Work and Pensions care about a lot because it saves money. So we know that reduces reoffending and more likely to get a job, which are both really important measures. But that's just an overall statistical analysis. We also ask people who do our courses what they think and what their experience has been. Again, through monitoring forms and postcards, people send us feedback in all sorts of ways. You'll see in a minute, one's on a post-it note. Again, some sort of overarching work pulling it together, asking people what they thought after their course. 90% said they had skills and knowledge that would contribute to wider society. 88% felt they'd be able to change their life and do something positive after release, and 73% said they thought they had a good chance of getting a job after release. So people leaving one of our courses, and this isn't, you can't do a match comparison of this, so it's not scientific. This is what people are telling us about how they feel after they've done one of our courses, when we ask them to specifically reflect on how our courses made them feel. And then, so that's some of the sort of numbers. I also thought I'd just share with you a few bits of feedback that learners have given us that I think symbolizes in a way some of the differences that our course makes. So this one is someone who studied a course with us, creative writing course, in fact. And so this course has been the only constant as I transferred from prison to prison, and gave me an emotional and psychological anchor to support my mental health and give me hope for the future. And I think it's a really good example of that broader benefit of the courses that we offer. It's not just about getting a job, it's about hope. It's about mental health and well-being for people when they're in prison. And a lot of these quotes, which are pretty typical of the ones we get in, echo some of those themes. So again, this one, when I was convinced I lost all hope of having a future, but doing this course has given me back hope of a better life. I think for people in prison, hope and the idea that you might be able to do something more positive with your life is incredibly important. So I think that the courses that we offer contributing to that hopefully help to make a difference. I'm not going to read all of these out, but again, thank you so much for believing in me. Again, people feel that that PET support is a sign that the system's trying to help them to change. And then at the end of the one that's on a blue post-it, and the chance to make my family proud of me for once. Again, that's something we hear a lot of people wanting to demonstrate to their family that they're doing something to change and to turn their lives around. And giving them a chance to do that is really important to a lot of our learners. I thought this one, I've only got one more after this, don't worry, I'm not going to do this all day. We have thousands, but I just picked a few. I thought this one symbolized nicely the sort of twin goals that a lot of people feel. It's providing exactly what I needed, both a practical step towards my career goals, so that kind of employment, I need the skills, I need the qualification, I want to get a job, and the positive, productive occupation I find so essential for my mental health. And that's it's giving me something to do in prison to keep me busy, that I can do when I'm sitting in a cell with nothing else to do, locked up for long periods of time. And that we know from so much of our feedback that that is a really positive part of improving mental health and well-being. And then lastly, again, because I think it nicely sums up some of the difference that we make, got one step closer to the goal of being a positive role model for my son. So again, that family and that sense of pride and of wanting to do something to show families that you've changed. And then this is my 6th time in prison, but now thanks to PET, definitely my last. Again, that idea that doing something with PET helps you to not reoffend when you come out. Always realize this is a bit of a hostage to fortune. If he does end up back in prison, I'm going to have to stop using this quote. But so far, so good. So I hope what I've run through is a bit about our history and what we do, a little bit about the courses that we offer and why people do them, and a little bit about what impact that has, both in terms of reoffending and employment, but also on those individuals and the difference that they feel it makes for them. I'm now going to hand you over to Claire, who's going to talk, as I said, a bit more about how we work in practical terms.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to run through a little bit of the process around the way in which people apply to us at PET and some of the support we give them. So we try and give people as much information as possible before they make an application to PET. We try to talk to them about the courses we provide, the support we offer, and we try to give people tips on study skills. And as John's already explained, we produce a yearly prospectus from which people can choose the right course for them. And choosing the right course is really important. I don't know if anybody in the room has ever done any distance learning before, but it's not easy. And so choosing a course that you're really interested in, or that you're a subject that you're really passionate about, is a really important thing to consider at the very start of the process. And as John said, we offer a broad spectrum of subjects, and what we want to try and do is we want to try to appeal to as many people as possible and to give people a kind of springboard to start off their education, or for some people that already started their studies, something interesting to progress to. So hopefully when you have a look at our prospectus after this, you'll be able to see all the different sorts of courses that we offer. And we really suggest that people prepare as much as they can before they become a distance learner. And they can do this in a number of ways. So they can call our advice line and they can speak to our team directly, which as John explained, we set up during COVID. But it's been a really important part of our service, and it means that people can ring, talk to us directly, ask us questions about particular courses. We can ask them questions around what their goals and ambitions are and try and match the two things together. We can suggest that people take one of our free short courses, and that introduces people to distance learning and helps them brush up on their study skills. And distance learning isn't for everyone, and so trying something out first is a really great way to see if this form of study is really right for you. We can also suggest that people visit the library and start to research the topic or subject they're interested in, and that's also really important because you might something completely different that you're actually interested in. So again, choosing the right course and doing that research is really important. And of course, taking advantage of the opportunities within the prison education department is also really important. Having a bit of experience behind you in studying, getting back into studying, and really demonstrating your kind of commitment. So once people have chosen their course and started their preparation, it's then time for the application. So the application can only be accessed from prison education staff, and so people have to ask for it. They can't come directly to ask for it. And on that application, we ask people to tell us about their previous experience and the previous experience of study, of volunteering, and of working. And we ask people to tell us why they've chosen that particular course. And again, that's really important for us to understand whether people are prepared and whether they're motivated to start and, importantly, to finish the course that they've chosen. We also want to find out what difference studying this course will make. And we want people to think about that right at the start of the process. And as John has again explained, we also ask people those sorts of questions towards the end of their study as well, to see if those things marry up, to see if that really did make a difference, or the sort of difference people thought that the course would make. The final part of the application is for the nominated person in the education department to agree the application and to ensure that the course is suitable and that they're willing to support the learner. Sorry, John, I've probably gone on without actually asking you to switch to the next slide. Sorry. Thank you. That's it, yeah. So it was really important that the member of staff in the prison who is nominated to sign off the application from PET really takes some time to go through the application, make sure that the application is completed thoroughly, and make sure that they're happy to sign off the application and support the learner. They then send the application off to us at PET, and we accept applications throughout the year. We have a kind of monthly cycle, and on average, we receive around 200 applications every month. So for those people that their application is successful, we then purchase the courses from one of our suppliers and send that off to the prison, and then the course belongs to the learner. For those people who are unsuccessful, we write to them explaining why, and we offer hints and tips on how to improve their application if they wish. If they wish to reapply. You don't mind? Yeah, absolutely.
So when they get rejected and they decide to reapply, is there like a specific time frame from the letter that they get rejected to reapplying?
It would depend on the individual and on the advice that we would have given in the letter. So there might be some additional work for that person to do, maybe to reach a particular level or to have done some previous experience beforehand. Or it could be just to improve on the information that they've told us on the application. But there isn't a set time between applying for another course or another opportunity for a course.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. So we try to give really detailed information for people if they've been unsuccessful, because we understand how disappointed people would be if they've worked hard to complete an application form and then weren't funded. So we try really hard to write detailed letters back to people so that they can understand how they can improve their application if they decide to reapply. Do you mind moving on the slide, please, John? So who can apply? So this is PET criteria. So it's fairly straightforward. So people must be over 18, have at least 6 months left to serve on their sentence, be at level 2 for literacy and for some courses numeracy, and also not to be studying a PET course at the moment. So we ask people to study one course, finish that course before they apply for another. There are also some courses that we offer that we ask people to have had the kind of initial level before they apply for the subsequent level. So, for example, we in the top 10, I think it's actually number 1 in our course list is the NEBOSH Health and Safety course. So we offer a level 2 course. So we ask people to complete the level 2 course before they move on to the level 3 course. So for some courses, there are particular stipulations, but for the majority of courses, these are the set of criteria for application. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So we couldn't provide our service without the support of prison staff. So to help them, we provide a secure space on our website where we host, hopefully, some useful resources. And there's a secure login that you can access from our website if you don't have one already. We provide a staff handbook, and this is a step-by-step guide into a PET process on some hints and tips on how to support distance learning, how to create a suitable learning environment in your establishment. Hopefully lots of information to support people as distance learners. We carry out virtual prison visits. Again, this is something we started during lockdown. So we invited groups of prisons together to join us on a Zoom call and talk through general good practice around distance learning and kind of try to troubleshoot some challenges, but also to talk about the successes that individual establishments were having and share that good practice. And we've continued those virtual prison visits, and we've also introduced online training sessions for new staff and even for existing staff that maybe need to brush up on some of the processes that we've got, particularly those staff that have moved around the establishment and maybe have come back to distance learning after a time away, just to make sure that you're up to speed with all of the different aspects of application and how to support people. And we're always at the end of the phone. So if you ever get stuck or prison staff want to find out something about a particular course or a learner, then we're always at the end of the phone to help. I think the next slide, please, John. So what can prison staff do to help us? Well, importantly, it's around promoting PET as a really good thing to people in prison and to potential learners and people that are interested in progressing their studies. And John has already spoken about lots of the benefits of distance learning. And so we really try to encourage people to share those benefits. It's also really important, as I've talked about, in preparing people for their independent studies. So helping people by encouraging them to do research, to prepare to become a learner, maybe do a short course, maybe do some courses that are already on offer in the prison. So to think carefully about what you want to study and how you're going to study. So that preparation is really important, and some help along the way, I'm sure, is really well received. Ensuring applications are completed accurately and thoroughly is really important. People often spend a long time completing their application forms, but might miss out a whole section. So if we receive applications with blank sections, that's really not helpful for us, because that's a piece of vital information that we don't get. So making sure applications are completed thoroughly and accurately is so helpful for us. Also, supporting people once they've received their course is really important. I think we've all found somebody that's really supportive, to asking us how it's going and how our course is and whether or not they're finding it interesting is really encouraging. And trying to motivate people from afar is quite a challenge. We really try and do that through our advice line, but any help in motivating people along the way is greatly received. And again, I'm sure people will really appreciate that. And what's really important to us at PET is being able to get feedback and information on the status of people's study. So completing feedback to us through our digital monitoring is also super helpful. We launched a digital monitoring process back in March 2022, and it's been an amazing success. And only 6 prisons out of however many there are, too many, haven't used that process, so which I think is really staggering. And I was going to do the statistic the other way around, but I think actually we all know how many prisons there are and what challenging environment it is. So for only 6 places not to use that process is amazing, and maybe those 6 don't even have any distance learners. So it's really great that people are able to log on to a really secure system and update us on the status of learners. Is really helpful, because that means we can all keep track and we all know where people are and what they're doing, and that enables us to support people in the most appropriate way. And last but not least, talking about money, is paying the 10% contribution that we ask prisons to pay. So, and that's usually around £35 to £40 per applicant. And we think, in the scheme of things, that's a pretty reasonable amount of money for some really good quality distance learning courses. And that's it from me. Back to John, unless there's any questions.
Shall I do this bit? And
I've
then,
got a couple of oh no, go on.
Yeah.
You finish your bit, and then I've got a couple of questions.
Okay. Well, why don't I've got one slide, so why don't I do that quickly, and then we'll move on to questions, because there's also one in the chat that I've seen, but I will make sure I come to you first. Just thought I'd quickly summarize kind of what's coming up for PET in terms of our current priorities. So, I mean, the first thing to say, and it's kind of an obvious point, but providing access to high quality courses and related information, advice and guidance is absolutely core to what PET does. Don't see that changing anytime soon. And we're continuing to build on that by making sure that our course offer is as good as it can possibly be. Claire is in the middle of updating our prospectus, which we do every year. And I think the new one will be out in December, hopefully. But just making sure that the courses that we offer are as good courses as they can be, and that we sort of smooth off any rough edges in terms of how they work in a prison context. We're also doing a piece of work to develop the support that we're able to offer to people in prison. Claire mentioned, distance learning is difficult in any environment, let alone in a prison, and it can be pretty lonely, particularly in prisons where there aren't many people doing distance learning. And so we're trying to think about what PET can do to work with prisons to enhance the support that people get, partly to help more of them to complete their courses, but also to make sure that people have as positive an experience as possible of learning and education, because the more people enjoy it, the more likely they are to carry on doing it with us or elsewhere, or right when they leave or whatever. So it's not just about completion rates, though that matters. It's about enhancing the experience of learning that's really important. We're also doing some work to extend our reach. Some prisons have more distance learners, other prisons have fewer. We want to try and level that up, to use that phrase, as much as possible, by trying to make sure that as many prisons as possible put as many people as suitable forward for distance learning. So that wherever you are in the estates, if you're a sentenced prisoner, you have the same access to PET. I'm also thinking about whether there are some communities within the prison population who are less likely to access PET courses, and what we could do to address that, whether it's the course offer or how we promote ourselves, or all those different things. I mentioned, and I think Claire mentioned, that almost all of our courses are still done on paper because that's the way to get things into prison. We'd like to change that. We'd like to make many more of our courses and other services available digitally. That will happen as and when more people in prison get access to laptops or other digital devices, but we're sort of preparing for that as quickly as possible. And in all that, and to go back to where I started, we're making sure that we put learners and their experiences at the heart of all the things that we do. So all these changes, all these plans, all the way we've updated our services are all about trying to make sure it's a really positive experience for our learners, but also, and not on the slide, but it should have been, also trying to make sure that what we do works for prison staff and all of you, because as Claire said, we can't do this without your support. And we know how busy and stretched you all are. So what we do has to work for the learners, has to work for you. And that's how we're sort of adapting our services to make sure that happens. And that's it from me. And having rudely cut across Shard, who wanted to ask a question, I'm now going to do questions. So why don't we come to you first? And I might stop sharing so everyone's not so tiny.
Yeah, I think the question in the chat came in before I had my questions. If you'd like to go to that lady first, or answer that question, I think it was around degrees.
Yeah, well, I want to answer that one quickly. So the question from Emma was, do you offer degrees from providers other than the Open University? So it's a good question. We don't fund degree level study at the moment. So we fund Open University access courses, which are provided by the Open University, but are pre-degree courses, so they don't count towards a degree. For people who want to study a degree, they have to get funding for that via a student loan or another source. And there are some other sources, Longford Trust and a few others, who can provide funding for degrees. But most people, as you'll probably know, who do degrees in prison fund it through a student loan, as you would do in the community. And that's where something which you'll probably all know about, the 6-year rule, kicks in, where you have to be within 6 years of leaving prison or anticipating leaving prison to be able to get that funding. So we don't work directly with universities around degrees. We only work with the Open University around access courses, so we don't do foundation courses or anything like that with any other universities at the moment, which is sort of Open University get support from HMPPS to offer access courses into prison, and therefore we work with them to get people into them. But as you've seen, it's a relatively small part of our broader course offer. I don't know if that answers your question, Emma.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thanks for confirming.
Brilliant. So finally, Sian, back to you.
I know they've quite a build up to these questions now. So I just wondered, personal curiosity really, is there a correlation, do you know, between the creative writing applicants you get and a strong reading strategy within the prison's establishment? Or is it just people wanting to study creative writing?
Unless Claire wants to correct me, I don't think we know that, because I don't think we know enough about what's going on in prisons in terms of their sort of reading strategies and that sort of thing to be able to draw those sorts of to be able to sort of draw conclusions about why people are applying for particular courses. It's a really interesting question. I'm not quite sure how we'd answer it, but I would be really interested in knowing the answers. A piece of work we sort of periodically talk about doing and may get picked up is looking at where people from different prisons apply from different courses, and we might start to get some lessons from that. But with the caveat that even for our more popular courses, the numbers applying aren't huge, so it's quite difficult to draw definite conclusions. But there are some bigger prisons from that we get pretty regular numbers of applications from, so we might be able to get an idea from that, but I'm afraid I don't know at the moment.
Okay. And then I've just got a question around referrals. So you talked in your presentation, both of you, about prison staff, and I just wanted some clarification on who that might be. Is that the heads of education, skills and work? Is it the PEF staff, so the provider staff who might refer into you, or is it the IAG providers, or is it a mix of all of those? And how does that happen?
Well, unsurprisingly, it's different in different establishments. And it's so generally we ask for a nominated person who is going to be the person that's authorized in order to sign the application. And that may or may not be the person that actually supports the learner. So there may be a number of people. So there may be some people that support learners in the preparation for their studies, or maybe an IAG member of staff that's giving people options. It may be a member of education staff that provides the application form and helps that person through the application form. And then it may be a head of department that then has the authorization to sign off the application from a risk perspective and from a financial perspective. Or it could be one person doing all of those tasks. Again, it would depend on establishment, but we ask for nominated people so that we know when we get the application that it's signed off by somebody that is authorized to do those two important things. One, on ensuring that it's the right course for the right individual, and we have some risk management processes to go through to ensure that's appropriate, and also to sign off that they're agreeing to pay the 10% contribution to the course fee.
Yeah. And then just the follow-up question to that then is that person or suite of people who provide that support around the learner, are they then the person who is that tutor support inside the prison for them, or do they access that subject specific support from a different tutor who is on the programme? So I've got your prospectus up in front of me now, and there's, as you said, John, you can't be a subject specialist in 125 subjects, even as the Prison Education Trust, let alone having one person to do all of that, because you might be in an establishment where they could be doing, I don't know, 18 of the courses that you offer, and each of them have different things. So how does that work? Because all of them have tutor support, yes, written next to it. So who is that person that provides that support for the person doing the distance learning?
Sure. So the tutor support comes with the course. So the tutor support, or the tutor comes from the course supplier. So for example, if we're talking about our most popular course, the level 2 health and safety course is provided by an organisation called ATM, and ATM would be providing the tutor support. What the part that the prison staff is that connection. So that might be organising a telephone call, or it might be emails on behalf of the learner with regard, or it might be sending off assessments if the learner can't do it for themselves. So it's really the prison staff often help by enabling that communication to happen between the course tutor and the student.
Yeah, so you act as an intermediary or the
That's right.
facilitator of that between the
But-
learner doing the distance learning and the provider of the supplier, as you called them, of the programs themselves.
Exactly that,
That's
exactly
great.
that. And some people take up the offer of the tutor support and some people don't. And again, and I didn't put this in the presentation, but one of the things that prison staff can do is really encourage people to take advantage of that tutor support. We pay for it, it's part of the fee, and it's really helpful. And I'm pretty sure people get a much richer learning experience by connecting with that tutor than they would otherwise if they didn't. I mean, for those people with written assessments, you kind of have to. There is no choice because your assessment needs to be marked. But there's often additional support that the tutor will give, and we really recommend that people take up that opportunity.
Great, thank you very much.
I have a question. So when they decide to start the course, what is the time frame that they have to complete it?
Okay. So the majority of courses, we have a time frame of 12 months. That's
Okay.
just a ballpark average figure. But what we would advise is that people start as soon as they possibly can. But if there is going to be a delay, and we know sometimes there is a delay, particularly if people are transferred or things go missing and personal circumstances might mean that people aren't ready to start their course, if you could let us know, or if you could let the course supplier know that there's going to be a delay in somebody starting, because we might, or the supplier might think that that person has decided not to start the course at all. So any information, if there's going to be a delay, is really, really helpful. But generally, it's around 12 months that people have got to start and then finish their course. But if people find that 12 months isn't long enough, or there's a reason why they can't finish, again, to get in touch with us, because for some courses, there is an opportunity to have an extension on that time.
And that's why I think that communication between us and the learners and the prison staff is so important, because we can help to facilitate that, but only if we know what's going on and what the delays are.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone who's on the call, either in the chat or shout out if I can't see you. Nope. Excellent. We have been so comprehensive, or taught so much, depending on which way you look at it, that we've silenced everyone. Well, in that case, I'm not going to keep you here because I'm sure you're all busy people with jobs to get back to. But thanks very much for joining us. I think just for those of you who work directly in prisons or with learners or whatever, one of the things we really try and do at PT is to be really approachable and helpful. And people in Claire's team are fantastic at answering all questions, whether you think they're stupid questions or not. So do get in touch. We'd much rather you asked. We will try and help. We will have dealt with it a million times before in different prisons. So so do get in touch if you've got questions or if you want help or if you're not sure. And we will try and help. And if you haven't got many distance learners in your prison at the moment, do encourage people to take up the opportunity to look at what PET has to offer. I think we've got a fantastic course offer there for pretty much anyone, and so hopefully people will find something there that they like. And other than that, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and hopefully see you again soon.